Actually, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. Eric Meyer here, co-founder of An Event Apart. Glad you could join us. And I'm here with Jason Grigsby, who's joining me from lovely Portland, Oregon. We were talking about weather just before we went on, because apparently it's cloudy there, and it's not cloudy here for some reason, even though I live in a place that should be cloudy this time of year. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about, well, stuff. What Jason's up to. We're going to talk about his talk for Spring Summit 2022, which is coming up next month, April 18th through 20th. And we're probably going to commiserate about writing books because we've both done that. And yeah, anyway, hi, Jason.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, at some point I should let Jason speak for himself. So how are you today?
I'm doing well. It's nice to be here. So
yeah, cool. So what have you, I mean, not gonna lie, a part of the reason that we do these things is that it's an excuse to talk to people that I haven't seen in 2 years.
I know.
like yourself. What you been up to? What you been doing?
I think like most people, the pandemic, totally upturned our lives. And for us, it's been a little bit more dramatic because shortly before COVID hit, my father had a stroke and ended up with the trach. And so he has moved in, and we've become his physical therapists and his nurses and his respiratory therapists and all of that. So a lot of my life, unfortunately, at the moment revolves around sort of his schedule. So that's like the biggest thing. Outside of that, from a work perspective, we have been doing a lot of design system work, just continuing stuff that we've been doing for a while. And in particular, sort of working with larger organizations that are attempting to try to figure out how to gain broader adoption of design systems. And so what I've been.
Oh, sorry. Well, when you say large organizations, like what size organization? Or if you could name an organization, that'd be lovely too. But clients can be weird about that.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where they fit on like the Fortune like lists of companies. But I'm assuming they're up there. Like a company that's recognizable that you would know. And I just can't remember if they've talked about working with us or not. So yeah, I don't think I can talk about it.
But we're talking thousands and thousands of employees, kind of.
Sometimes. Like another organization we worked with is, I would say, like a smaller but established virtual event company, and they have employees in multiple countries, but I don't think of them as being thousands of employees. They're probably like a couple hundred, 500 maybe. I'm not sure. They're small, on the smaller scale. They have an application though, so a design system seems a little bit makes a lot more sense for them product wise.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. You say that it makes more sense for them product wise because they have an app. Talk about that, like why that makes more sense.
So I think design systems have a large upfront investment. And so if you're going to get utility out of them, it usually comes from having, a lot of screens that you're building, and you're building cross device. Maybe you're actually doing stuff in multiple platforms. So maybe you're doing stuff in native and in web. And so in that case, you might be able to share design tokens across those platforms. It's just when you get to, like I'm thinking about, because I actually don't know their headcount, but like I could see a 100-person company that doesn't have a product, it doesn't have an application, maybe just has a lead generation website or something of that nature, and a design system being, too much. Like it doesn't make sense to do all that work. But if the company's main focus is building some sort of software product, that's a case where having those repeatable components makes a lot of sense.
No, that makes sense.
But I think it's the larger organizations where the adoption challenges are the most acute, because you end up with multiple teams trying to you're trying to get multiple teams engaged and using the design system, and you're getting people of varying skill sets trying to use the design system. Whereas I think in a smaller organization, like oftentimes you just have fewer people to interact with, like and so you can kind of pick the right people to interact with the design system, I think.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. This might be giving away something, but how much of what you do is basically helping make the case? Especially in those large organizations where there are a lot of different teams coming from a lot of different perspectives, and
Yeah.
maybe some teams are a little bit defensive or gatekeepy about it.
Um, I definitely have seen that in the broader industry. It hasn't been as much of what we've run into. The case that we end up usually making is sort of at the beginning of the process. So we're working with we get approached by an organization. They're trying to, in the case of the virtual event company, they were trying to take an application that was never designed to be responsive and try to make it responsive. And so their primary focus is that. And in answering that question, we end up talking about how realistically we can't redesign all of these interfaces to be responsive without having the underlying blocks actually be responsive. And that there's we need to do investment in that in order to be able to sort of power the application and make sure that as they build new interfaces that they're responsive as well. Right. So that's a place where we have to sell them on the idea and what that means. And that wasn't necessarily what they came for. In another organization, it really was that they have a design system, so they totally get it, but the design system is built for their product, not for the people we're working with, which are on the marketing side. And the brand has a lot of imagery and sort of shapes and things that are they're really great, actually, but they're larger and they just don't make sense in the context of like a web application UI. But they make a great deal of sense in marketing. And so they're getting used in TV ads, they're getting used in print ads, are getting used in all these other places, but not being used successfully on the web, because the design system that the marketing team uses is the one that the product team created. And the product team didn't have the need for like the huge circles, for example. But it would make an amazing, web experience if they were able to leverage it. So those are the things that we're bumping up against. I think a lot of the other conversations you're having where that you're talking about are really the conversations that internal teams face. And we hear it anecdotally, but we don't get as much exposure to like the design team in, company A fighting, product teams and trying to get them to adopt the stuff. We hear about it, but we don't end up doing as much of that ourselves.
Right. Oh, well, being insulated from that's probably a good thing. So what kind of tools are you using to manage all this sort of stuff?
So that's sort of what I've been looking at a bit for the AA talk, because our process is one where, I mean, essentially, like we have designers who code and we have developers who have a lot of them. It used to be 100% of our developers had gone to art school. And so we had this nice like mix, and it's not 100% anymore, but like a lot of them have that background. And so what that means for us is that, we'll build, some sort of prototyping environment that we'll do designs in. We'll create HTML mockups. We've moved to using an open source tool called Storybook for a lot of our design system work. We had our own tool called Drizzle that we made and open sourced and then deprecated because there were other platforms like Storybook that were basically, there were more maintainers and doing a better job of it than we were with Drizzle. So our tooling is a bit more of, custom, I guess it's sort of off the shelf open source stuff. And then like whatever sort of packages we want to bring in to make our development process easier and to make our design process easier. But a lot of what I see in organizations is this problem where the tools that designers are using aren't able to consume the actual design system itself. And designers who, are really phenomenal designers, but can't code, right? And so, there's been this long debate about whether designers should code or not code, or, and, I think that it would be useful. It's clearly useful in our company when we have designers who are able to code. But I think it's unrealistic to expect everyone who has a really phenomenal eye for design to be able to code. And so a lot of what has been frustrating is realizing that you end up with these sort of silos where the design team has created, maybe numerous shared component files in Sketch or in Figma or something like that they're using to build designs from. But those pieces are fixed with static assets that don't actually reflect the source of truth, which in my mind is the design system and in the code, because the design system has had to account for not just one screen size, but multiple screen sizes and accessibility and performance and all the things we have to do in order to have something successful on the web. And so you end up with these two divergent worlds. And so everything has friction in it. And what I wanted to look at was, and what I'm talking about in the talk is about design tools that are starting to bridge that gap a little better. Yeah.
And you feel like Storybook is one of those?
Well, Storybook is just, Storybook is what we use. I don't think that it's actually, like it's just a documentation repository for this. But there are three tools that seem to be, that have pieces of this. So Framer, which is a design tool that will allow you to, unfortunately, these are all React based, which would not be my preference, but they are. So Framer will import React components. You can bring them in and then you can use them like any other design thing. UXPin has a tool called Merge, which you can point at a Storybook website. And it will just import all the components from it. It's pretty cool. Like if you haven't, it will do varying levels of success depending on the component and how you've set up your Storybook instance. But it's pretty gratifying. Like I took Audi's design system, which is publicly accessible, and just imported into UXPin just for fun. And then the one that I think is pretty interesting isn't actually by the design tool itself, but there's a third-party plugin for Figma called Interplay that will basically take React components and then generate them into Figma. And then there's another third-party plugin called Breakpoints that actually allows you to sort of adjust the layout of pages and actually have, like responsive breakpoints in that. And what's interesting is like Ethan wrote his article about responsive design in 2010, right? And it's 2022. And that Figma application with two third parties, right? Two third parties included, or maybe it's just including breakpoints. Maybe you don't even need to use the components in Interplay stuff syncing. That's the only one that actually does responsive design.
Wow.
Um, and that's kind of a sorry statement about our design tools.
Yeah.
Um, I dug out this website, Liquid Appsive. Do you remember this? Um, it's not even, the website is down now. It's been so long. But I found somebody who has a copy of it. And I'm probably going to include it in the talk. But this website was designed where you could like compare like what a liquid design was versus a adaptive design versus a responsive design versus a static design. And you just had like this pull down and you could pick between them and kind of see them. And so, you know, built back in 2014 for those definitions. And of those, like, we're barely getting to adaptive, or no, we're starting to do liquid in design tools, and only one tool is doing responsive. Like it's strange to me. I mean, and so a lot of like the way that I think about this is there's a lot of design challenges that come through when you're actually solving for multiple screen sizes and when you're resizing the browser and seeing where things look bad. And right now, the people who aren't designing in code just don't have a way to do it. And I would like the people who work on web design to be able to have the power to participate in that full design process.
Yeah, I mean, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still, my brain keeps going back over only one tool is responsive.
Yeah, I know, right?
I must have misunderstood what he said. But no, clearly I didn't, which is weird.
Okay, so there are multiple tools now that have the ability to have like Figma has this feature that they call auto layout, which allows you to create something, and like as you expand it in Figma, like it will adjust. I think that they've actually described it as like the lightweight version of Flexbox or something of that nature. So if you think of that as like a foundational piece of being able to make a section of a site responsive, like, yeah, that's great. But what you don't have is, okay, we're going to create a design, and maybe you know, like Stephen Hay back in the day described responsive design as like resize your browser until something looks like crap, and then boom, that's where you need a breakpoint, right? Like and that is a fundamental, that is like a lot of what we do, right? We're resizing things, and then we discover a place where it looks bad, and then we decide, okay, what are we going to do with that? And sometimes that can be something like auto layout, where you're like, okay, well, it should just, you know, evenly space things out as things get smaller or bigger. But sometimes it actually means like fundamental layout changes. Right? Like it means the sidebar that you have had visible now needs to be, you know, below, or it needs to be hidden, or it needs to be wherever it is. And you can do that in design tools by creating mockups, static mockups of multiple screen sizes to show like what it's supposed to look like. But other than, you know, as far as I can tell, and maybe I've missed something, but I've spent quite a bit of time sort of like looking for design tools that do this, because I think that those are the really interesting design challenges, is when you resize the browser and things look bad. Other than doing this with either writing it in code or using this Figma plus breakpoints plugin, like all the other tools are at most doing the Flexbox type, like resizing. Like that's as far as we've gotten in design tools.
Wow. Do you make a lot of use of multi-view previewers. Polypane is the one that I'm thinking of, but there are others where like you have a great big window and you can set up a bunch of different screen sizes and it will load the same.
So we don't.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, again, like we're designing in the browser.
Right.
The reason why I am interested in this problem is because of the fact that we have designers and client organizations that are not.
Okay.
And so what I'm trying to figure out is how do we empower those designers to be able to use components that have been defined and have all of the really great stuff baked into them. All of the accessibility and performance and all those pieces. And how do we have them participate in a way that helps them discover the responsive problems, before they hand it off to developers, and particularly in cases where developers are maybe not as design centered. So they're not actually, they don't see anything wrong with it as it like where we would resize the browser and be like, oh, that looks like crap, we need to do something about it. They might look at it and go like, yeah, it looks fine. I don't know. Like, so I'm trying to find ways to do that so that so the organizations we work with, they can have better adoption of the design system by their own designers,
right?
And reduce the amount of work so that they're not like maintaining two sources of truth, right? A whole bunch of Figma assets and a bunch of actual code.
No, that makes sense. So you're going to be talking about some of the stuff at Spring Summit. That's awesome. I was already looking forward to it. Now I'm more looking forward to it. That's Monday, April 18th will be your talk.
The funny thing about recording stuff these days is that that I don't have the same like attachment to the date that the that the presentation is happening as much as like when you get on the stage.
Right.
Although yes, if you say it's the 18th, then yes, that sounds right.
we do have the live Q&A after the talk is done. So maybe get it in there a little bit. So Jason will be talking either with me or Jeffrey. I don't, it will depend on how the schedule shakes out, but we'll have Jason's talk, which will be about all of this, and then have a live Q&A after that. That's Monday, April 18th. And also, if anyone's thinking of coming to see Jason or any of the other talks, if you sign up for 3-day pass during this month, the month of March, you'll get a free copy of Jason Grigsby's ebook, Progressive Web Apps, which he wrote for A Book Apart. And that's
slightly different topic than the
it's a different topic, but if your web app's
still
going to be
useful,
progressive, it should probably also be responsive, and it should have a design system.
And I should tell, like, for those who are listening who aren't coders, or who are coders, it's not written for people who are going to do a lot of code. Like, it is written actually for teams who are trying to make decisions about what features of progressive web app make sense for them or don't make sense for them, and what the implications of that are. Like, so there's this wide continuum of progressive web apps, and there are lightweight versions of them, and there are really complex versions. So that's what it tries to do.
More of a design and process book, it sounds like, than Cody.
Exactly. Yeah, there's not a lot of code. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, but like you say, coders have to make those same decisions, right? You have to decide what to code before you code, and that's what the book will help with. Awesome. Okay, well, like I say, register for a 3-day pass during March, get a free copy of Jason's book, and also you get to come see Jason talk about fluid design tools for a responsive design system world on Monday the 18th. And Jason, thanks a ton.
Thank you so much.
Really great talking to you. We'll see you soon.